Retraining Pain here, just finished a run, Sunday run. That's another week down in the books. It's been interesting doing this vlog. I'm not sure yet if I found my cadence on it or whatnot. I've been recording my exercising, or my training, I'm going to call it training now, which has been good and bad in that, it shows what I am doing, which is interesting, and there's some great scenery and all that sort of stuff, and my daughter watches it, and she can see what we're doing, which is cool. And then the other side of it is I have to stop, set up the camera, sometimes on that tripod, turn off the watch, so it's kind of on pause. And then sometimes I forget to turn it back on, so I start running again. Or I forget to turn it off, and then my average speed is off. So that's number one. Number two is it takes a while to edit it all together. Not that I don't mind, I'm watching some TV, but it does take time. And then number three is the first two. That's about it. But it's interesting, I kind of got my first comment on the vlog. And it had to do with, I guess I had a short where I talked about that I decided to try drinking after 6 months on Monjaro. And it was out in Pittsburgh at one of the hockey games, college football games, Pitt Panthers. And that I really did it. I had, like 20 out of 26 ounces and that sort of thing. And since I've been on Monjaro, as I mentioned, my drinking is curtailed. I can now, it's actually interesting, have one drink or a couple of drinks. I don't get a buzz on it, but it's responsible. Anyway, I thought, it was an interesting comment. It was like, you need to address your drinking. I forget the exact thing, but it was interesting because it did get me thinking. And, why is it that I enjoy drinking? And I've been drinking since I was 15 years old. I remember I looked older back then, so I'd go into the beer vendor and I would be the guy that gets the beer. And then I also really enjoyed, the feelings involved. I felt that everything that life was giving me, if I went skiing with the school trip, I'd pick up some Southern Comfort and I would drink that, and going downhill skiing was so much more fun, and everything was so much more fun and heightened when you were drunk or drinking. And of course, I never drank to enjoy it. I always drank to get drunk. I remember we would pick up 6-packs, me and a buddy of mine, and you always go for, in Canada or in Winnipeg, they had extra old stock, which was a really strong, had the highest degree of alcohol for a beer. I think it was like 7.5%. Just tasted like shit though. But what did we care when we were younger? So we would pick it up. I'd pick it up, a 6-pack. That's all we could afford, bottles. And we would walk down an alley, kind of like an alley like this behind me. And you see the phone poles. What we would do is every phone pole, we would down one of them because we wanted to get drunk real quick. So it'd be like, boom, down it goes, and it tasted awful. And then the next one, down it goes. And then by the third one, when we were, looking that we were 15 years old, it would automatically we were out of it for the night. It was awesome. And then whatever we did, and way back then, drinking and driving was so normal, man. It was actually rare not to drink and drive. And I look back, and now it's a whole different world. And I know, it depends on the person. I always felt, and this is going to be a controversial statement, but I always felt I was a better driver when I drank, although I was a never blackout drunk driver. I did the guy that I'm referring to, that we would go and have drinks. One time I was with him in his car, and he went the wrong way down a street. We were going to McDonald's, and I was like, dude, I don't want to say his name, But I was like, dude, we'll call him Dave. Dave, you're going the wrong way. And we were going to McDonald's. And anyway, the next day, I was saying to him, I go, man, you're going down the wrong street. It was on a highway, Henderson Highway, which is a pretty, a main thoroughfare in Winnipeg. And he had no recollection. He had blacked out drunk. And the first time I was like, holy shit, man. And I remember one of the times, and I bring up his name all the time, but he wasn't, there was many of these guys, but he was also a pretty good friend. He was always worried about me because, I'd have a few drinks and for whatever reason, you could say, like I could get into why do I enjoy it, whatever, the first part was just the excitement. It brought everything a little bit more exciting. And so the one story, and I guess this is a Sunday story, the one story that was pretty crazy was I was at the Norvilla. Again, I was probably 15, 16, and we were there. I'm sure it was, the strip, peeler show, whatever. And so just got so out of it. And I met a guy there, and I look back now and I think so many times I could have been killed. There's actually one time I was almost killed. I'll tell that story. So anyway, I started talking to him, and there was a place called Skinner's Wet and Wild, and it had water slides. And for whatever reason, I said to the guy, hey, he had a truck. We had never known each other. I said, hey, do you want to go to Skinner's Wet and Wild? And it was like 12 midnight, 1 in the morning, bar was closed. And we'll break in and we'll go down the slides. And the guy goes, yeah, sure, let's do it. And he was kind of a, shaky, seedy sort of guy. But I didn't care. Your judgment isn't, necessarily all that great. So we drove out to a place called Lockport, which, is about, 15, 18 kilometers away. And we get there, and we did pick up some beers, and we get outside, and we throw the beers over the fence like we're Navy SEALs. And we jump the fence. But before I called my buddy, Dave, and I told him what we were doing, and hey, do you want to come down? So he came down, drove his car, and kind of met us there. And then we jumped the fence, and we started going towards the slides. But what we didn't know was that they had overnight security there all the time. So I'm not sure if that's because they were, used to this sort of thing or not. So as we jumped, we probably got, 100 yards in, and then all of a sudden we see these two security guys, and they were probably just primed like nothing happens. And it's like, I don't know if they had baseball bats or what they had, but they were a little frightening, and they weren't much older than us. They were, maybe 30 years old. So I say not much older, but yeah, so they were maybe 28, 30, somewhere in there, and they were chasing. And we hightailed it, man. I don't know. We leaped over that fence, and it was like one of those high fences. And the next day, I was saying to my friend Dave, I said, hey, man, that's pretty cool, wasn't it? I said, I'm surprised you came down, because I called him at his house at like 12:30. And as a friend, it was pretty cool. He said, you know what? I have to come down. And I said, why? And he said, well, because I was worried about you. I didn't know who this guy was. And and I was like, wow, you know what? The guy was a little shaky. So who knew? Maybe something was going to happen. But the scariest that I had story, absolute scariest, was, what was it? About 12, 13 years ago, we were in Las Vegas, and we were at a conference. So the company that I had or was working at, we had this conference in Las Vegas for all the dealers, salespeople, and it was at the Luxor. And there was I come walking in, I'm feeling pretty good, and there's some young guy, I don't know, he might have been 22, 24, young Mexican kid, and he was nice. He says, hey, how's it going? And I treated him like he was some sort of a student. I was in the yearbook space, and so I'm like, yeah, you guys, you don't work hard. I'm kind of joking. And then all of a sudden it triggered this guy, and he came up to me, got in my face. It was the most frightening thing. And I had never, like, think of a Mexican gang member. You don't think of Mexican, like, I'm from Canada, so I don't think of gangs or Mexican gangs or anything like that. But just visualize one of those guys. And he was a little bit shorter, which also can be a little dangerous in terms of their psychology. And he got in my face, and I swear, the minute he did that, I sobered up in a New York minute. It was like, holy, you know what? My whole life, I knew, started flashing before my eyes, in that all I was saying to myself was, this is how I'm going to die. I figured maybe he had a knife or something. And all I did was I just didn't say anything. I didn't even apologize. I think the kid just saw the fear in my face, but all I could think about was Alice and the kids. And I was like, this is how it's going to happen. I am going to get killed here. And so anyway, the kid, kind of did one of these, don't ever do that, like, but really, really tough. And so all I did was, after he left, he got on the elevator, and I literally collapsed down to one knee. And I'm not kidding. I was down on one knee like this, and I was just like, my head down in the middle of the Luxor, and I was just like, my life, I'll never forget that moment. And it was one of those things that I learned my lesson. Don't don't do it to a Mexican kid. You never know, they're in gangs or whatever. But it was just one of those wake up calls for me. And so anyway, getting back to this comment that this person made, I can tell you, I've thought about it time and time again. And, the story I brought up was kind of when I just got into it, why, what was exciting and all the rest of it. And, we had parties, we were drinking, we were driving. It was, it was late 70s, early 80s, high school. It was just amazing. But when you look at it and you say, okay, why do you have such a propensity to alcohol or drinking it or whatnot? And I've said many a time, my biggest regrets, maybe even most of all my regrets, have happened when I was drinking. And I think there's much more to it than, just the excitement part. I think, like anything, you start a drug and it's just natural that, it's fun. Could be, I don't know, cocaine, heroin. Haven't done either, but I'm just assuming. Always afraid to ever do hard drugs because I know my personality, and I would probably, take it to the limit for sure. So anyway, I look at it and I go, you know what? There's more to it than just excitement. That's how it might start. But I think there's, a lot of other things. There's, it could be running in your family, hereditary. I definitely have a couple of, you look back, whether it was my grandfather who enjoyed drinking or his father, Irish background. There's, I'm sure some sort of DNA in there. Then I think it's also, it comes down to psychology. It could be self-sabotage. It could be, for me, I know if I look back at a lot of things, I do feel that I've self-sabotaged myself, which I can get into some of those on different conversations, or I've quit stuff a little too early, or I've quit stuff a little too late. And it's definitely escape. Like when I'm under a tremendous amount of stress And some of the stress I've had has been really heavy duty financial stress over the years, heavy duty. And so you use it to escape. And, um, and is it could also be brain chemistry, right? That you have a propensity to drink. It could be, some childhood trauma. It could be a whole bunch of things, and there's no one sort of thing to fix it. And the only thing that I found that has fixed it for me has been Monjaro, and very grateful. And that's one of the reasons that I say I'm not getting off this stuff. I was thinking, even if my blood work came back really bad, and it might be, it has to do with the kidneys. And I know for some doctors will not allow you to go on Monjaro if you have kidney sort of issues. I didn't go to my doctor to get the prescription, and I did go online to a doctor, and they sent me for blood work. This one sent me for blood work, and it came back my kidneys weren't functioning 100%, so they said, no, we can't prescribe Monjaro for you. So then, I'm the type that I'm not going to quit. So I decided, well, I'm just going to find someone else who's, doesn't do blood work, and then get me a prescription. So that's what I did. I found one and got the prescription and started taking it. I didn't tell my own doctor that I was on it or anything like that. And my own doctor, when he looked at the blood work for my kidneys, he didn't see that there was a problem. Creatinine was high, but he said that could be dehydration. It's if you've got a decent amount of muscle, if you work out a lot. And there is a test that shows what is your chances of kidney failure, and I'm right down. I think I'm in the 3B area. I don't know, but anyway, just getting back, I started taking it. And the reality was that the immediate reaction was I didn't want to drink anymore. And it was bizarre, immediate. So not only was I not eating, but I wasn't drinking, and no desire to drink. So that's where, when I look at it, I could dig deep on, my psychological side of my life, and why am I doing what I'm doing, and go for all sorts of therapy and all that stuff, and to understand why. But when you take something that does something to your brain and your receptors, which obviously taking Monjaro, and I know it has a component that works, not just the GLP-1 in your stomach and feeling full, but it does something in your brain, and they say that's what it is. So I'm taking it, and automatically I don't want to drink. And if I do drink, I don't want to drink a lot, and I don't, it's just more for taste. I'll sip a beer or whatever now. So that tells me a big part of my issue is brain chemistry. And I don't know how you fix brain chemistry other than maybe drugs, right? People are depressed, or take drugs, or bipolar, or schizophrenic, or whatnot. So there must be, I look at it, something in my brain that is, causes me to get those endorphins or that excitement or whatnot. And now that I've been taking this Monjaro, I think I have addressed my issue. Do I miss kind of the buzz and things like that? Yeah, I can't say I do. I can tell you I don't. I like getting up, without feeling all groggy, that's for sure. I love getting up when I haven't done anything regretful, whether a lot of it was just on Facebook, but there's other things that I've done that, calling people, saying stuff to people, that the next day, the worst one, oh man, this was bad. I was raising money for Doctors Without Borders. And so I was talking to a guy on the phone, and as I'm drinking, this is a guy I worked with. And I was getting mad at him because he hadn't donated any money, and we were talking about it, and I was asking him why and all this stuff. And something got me worked into a frenzy. I have no idea what it was, but I thought it would be a good idea to message all the people in my address book that I know. So there's roughly, 4,000 people in the address book. I thought it would be really good to message them all and tell them that I always support them, and why aren't they supporting me, and I want money, and you're an a-hole if you don't give it to me. It was bad. And I don't even remember kind of putting it together and sending it out. And the way I found out was in the morning, I got some emails, one from my brother, my youngest brother, and one from like some people I know, and they were giving me shit. What the hell? Man, I do stuff for you. And I was like, oh, wow. And then I had a customer or a business person call me and say, hey, man, it looks like someone hacked your emails. I'm like, oh, man. That's the only way. I don't even know if I can get out of this. But I mean, all I did was I sent an email out to everybody. I was hacked. I don't know who did it. Blah blah blah. And then all the guys that know me, they were like, dude, we know you weren't hacked. That this was you. And the one guy I was talking to that night, he was, he's a self-righteous guy, and he's like, I saw the email, you lied to everybody. And I said to him, dude, what do you think? You know what? The people that know me know I bullshitted, and they're just laughing their ass off, because they do laugh at the stuff that I do. And the people that don't know me, I have to get out of this somehow. All these people I know through business and everything, and they have a different opinion of me for sure, just from the business side, knowing me only business. I said, it's, what do you expect? So anyway, it was horrible. And then Doctors Without Borders sent me this email. It was so funny, basically saying, we know people, are passionate about, and we want, we appreciate you being so passionate, but we just don't want you to, we don't condone going too far. So I guess people must have sent them emails and saying, you've got some madman, what's he doing? Oh man. So anyway, that was an example of, what you do. Don't drink and email. Yeah, I remember another one. I've typically been the boss, but I had a boss, and I sent one to him one night. Called him a rich boy, and man, yeah, we kind of repaired the relationship a bit, but it took some time. It was, he was, I think I was definitely in the right, but I knew he grew up with like 4 maids and all this sort of stuff. So, hey, rich boy, I could go through it, it'd be horrible, but that's, I've paid the price with the drinking. I don't miss that. And overall, it's been great. And that's one of the reasons I don't see myself ever getting off Monjaro and doing the microdosing. And what I was going to say on the lab results and the kidneys, and that I got it without passing necessarily the tests, is I think about it now and I say to myself, well, what if the results came back and the doctor said you need to get off this? I don't know if I would. I really don't. I know that sounds, silly, foolish, whatnot. But it's one of those things that my life is a lot richer right now, and it's more stable. I'm so much more mentally balanced. It's crazy, maybe a little bit boring, but that's okay. And I'm like, wow, would I want to live let's say 80 years, or, with some craziness and, kind of been there, done that, living with some regret. Alcohol definitely isn't good for your health. There's no doubt about that, especially when you turn 60 years old. Would I want to do that? And the answer is, I don't know. I think I'd rather stay on the Monjaro and roll the dice, just because I feel, that it's helping me. And yeah, that's the thing. And when it's brain chemistry, which I'm pretty sure that's what it is, why wouldn't it be brain chemistry? If Monjaro, whatever's in there, is turning it off, that just tells me it's brain chemistry. So I could go through as much therapy as I want. I could, do all that stuff, but it's definitely brain chemistry. Not to say I haven't quit drinking. For when I was younger, I quit drinking from the time I was 18 for 7 years, and it happened from one of those moments. My youngest brother, I'd been beating on him his whole life, that I was so drunk, and he decided to put a licking on me. And it was one of those things that after that, I just said, you know what, I've got to stop. And so I did for 7 years. And then the stress, financial stress, one day, where I was like, just couldn't take it anymore. I decided to have drinks. And sure enough, it became, back to where it was. And then I've had other days where I ended up quitting for a couple of years, but always regret. So anyway, it was an interesting comment that came in, and yeah, it's my response to it. I think I am addressing it in the way that works for me, and at the end of the day, how you do it, I guess maybe the means justify the end. In this case anyway, maybe not in all cases, but in this case, the means justifies the end. Anyway, long one today. Have a good one. Sunday stories, retraining pain, trying to retrain myself both physically and mentally.